And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Thursday morning's flying weather. We've got areas of IFR out here over the central Bering Sea. Some IFR just south of the western Aleutians, and IFR there, mostly over Unmak Island. They're just west of Unalaska. And a couple areas of IFR here embedded in the marginal VFR covering much of the western part of the state. VFR central interior on into Canada, VFR for the North Slope and much of the Arctic coast. But more extensive IFR zone now that's sliding up into the southern Panhandle with a lot of low clouds in that area that comes across the Gulf of Alaska right on into the eastern Kenai Peninsula and possibly into Passage Canal as well. And then for the afternoon, that reduces back to the southeast here with VFR. So the low clouds, fog burn off over the southern southeast coast in the afternoon, giving way to at least VFR conditions there with the lower conditions off the coast. Some IFR here up over the northwest interior. Again, with the lower conditions, most of the marginal VFR over the western half of the state, most of VFR on the east side. Kodiak Island, though, up in toward Cook Inlet, into Cook Inlet, VFR. And out to the west, IFR spreading up out here over the western Aleutians and some IFR over the north central Bering Sea. And for Friday morning, IFR up here from the Koyukuk Valley, actually almost all the way down to the Yukon River, extends up across the Brooks Range, about to the eastern Arctic coast there, otherwise marginal conditions there for the remainder of the North Slope and the coastline. Marginal also here for the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, northern Bering Sea. And then with that next storm here, an area of IFR, central Aleutians, and into the southern Bering Sea, still over Unmak Island there with marginal VFR into about False Pass in the Alaska Peninsula. And IFR up for Friday morning here, northern Prince William Sound, Talkeetnas up to the central Alaska Range, and IFR back in over the central and south coast of the Panhandle, especially toward Prince of Wales Island. And then looks like for the afternoon Friday, marginal VFR here stays along the coastline, maybe even over some of the western inside channels there. Marginal VFR, southeastern interior, but much of the Copper River Basin, all of south central Alaska down to Kodiak into Bristol Bay, southern Kuskokwim Valley VFR, and a fair amount of VFR for the northern interior as well, with lower conditions there for the eastern Brooks Range and North Slope. And with that storm out here in the Bering Sea, area of IFR there just south of St. Matthew Island, and looks like most of that's going to be north of the Aleutians, Pribilof's though right in the IFR, but from, again, False Pass there, across the entire Aleutian chain, marginal VFR. And for the passes, Anatuvik and Adigan look marginal for the day Thursday. Lake Clark and Merrill, same forecast, marginal VFR. And for rainy, marginal VFR as well. Windy, looking marginal. Isabel, VFR. And looks like it'll be another VFR day for Mentasta. And then back to marginal again for Tanita. Portage, marginal VFR. Could start out with some IFR early on in the day on the eastern entrance, but for the most part, it'll be a marginal VFR day there. Chilkoot and White, chalk up another VFR day once again. And for the freezing levels here, upper level high pressure, warm air aloft, 14,000 foot freezing levels here. Western Canada and or into the southeast coast, 12,000 feet over a good portion of the southeast interior with 10,000 feet here all the way out into eastern Bristol Bay, northward there to the eastern Brooks Range. And then some cooler air with a trough here out over the Bering Sea tomorrow morning. Trough axis pushing eastward, so 6,000 feet out there. And icing, again, a trough coming, trough axis back to the west here with the rising motion in advance of that, squeezing the moisture out of the atmosphere. So it could be some considerable moderate rime icing here, or maybe clear, but it'll be moderate icing possible there along the Yukon River, up in toward the north slope there, this area sliding eastward throughout the day. And with the next storm coming into the Bering Sea, quite an area of moderate rime icing expected with that from the central Aleutians pushing in across the eastern Aleutians, at least toward the eastern Aleutians, but lifting north into the southern Bering Sea. And the jet stream, trough axis right through here, and south to north flow in advance of that up to 110 knots there over the north slope area, and lighter over the southeast coast as upper level high, kind of edging eastward there in across British Columbia and the Yukon. And then behind this trough, northwest winds up to 105 knots over the southeast Bering Sea and Alaska Peninsula. And in advance of the next storm here, even a stronger jet at 115 knots or so, 120 knots across the west central Aleutians. 9,000 feet showing the strong winds with this system here. 55 to 70 knots there out over the Aleutians and southwest Bering Sea. Again, a trough axis over the west coast areas. Southwesterlies 50 to 65 knots there on the east side of that. Westerlies of 40 knots tending to push this thing eastward. And light winds for the Gulf of Alaska and the southeast coast. And at 3,000 feet, light winds here, Gulf of Alaska, southeast coast, eastern, southern part of the state. Not too strong with this trough here over the western interior. The strong winds are out here in advance of that active front over the Aleutians there, up to 70 to 75 knots. They're ahead of that low. And so turbulence-wise, look for an extensive area, considerable moderate turbulence here for the area around Atka, westward to Shimia and Attu. Otherwise, isolated moderate turbulence in areas here from Togiak Bay, northern Togiak Bay, over the western interior up to the Arctic coast.